There has been a lot of criticism of President Obama amidst the recent news of the beheadings going on involving ISIS in the Middle East. And Eric Boehlert from Media Matters wrote a really interesting article pointing out that when the beheadings were happening under George W. Bush, the country needed to come together. We all need to work together. George W. Bush and any blame that he might bear for those beheadings never even came up, was never even mentioned. But now, under President Obama, the same usual suspects are blaming Obama for the beheading. So he writes that if you look back at when the George W. Bush beheadings were going on, and by that I don't mean beheadings done by George W. Bush or that George W. Bush was beheading, but simply that George W. Bush was president at the time. Bill O'Reilly said, for example, back in 2004, it's becoming readily apparent that the United States, we the people, have to unite. If we don't unite, we're going to see this happen more and more, and then on a mass scale, referring to the beheadings. We've got to stop this partisan garbage because that's what it is. We have to stop with the selfishness. This is a war. Sean Hannity back in 2004, speaking he was interviewing someone, it doesn't even matter who, saying, Richard, the shrillness of the rhetoric, a vice president of the United States screaming that, Al Gore screaming, Bush betrayed America. Are we taking limited resources and the president and his cabinet have to spend all that time fighting politically when they ought to be focused on World War III? It's time that we unite as a country using this latest beheading as an example that we have been warned. They want to kill us all. Lewis, no mention of George W. Bush bearing any responsibility, yet now it is Dick Cheney, it is all of the right-wingers on Fox News, it is Rush Limbaugh, everybody blaming Obama. He's not doing enough to stop the beheadings, or it's the climate he created that's responsible for the beheadings. Lewis, I'm shocked. Yet another right-wing media double standard.
I think, of course, there was still much less of that coming from the right during Bush's administration. Pointing the finger at Bush. But in general, I think people like to have a scapegoat. There's not really much talk that decades of our foreign policy might have had something to do with this. But
by the way, George W. Bush's specific decision to go into Iraq.
Of course, it was huge. We just need to point the finger, and there's no easier person to point the finger at than the president.